a tool which is not innovated by Oracle, owned by Oracle. It was innovated by a company called Synopsys in year 2006-2007. Initially, it was called as Synopsys Data Integrator. Later, when Oracle owned it, they renamed it as Oracle Data Integrator. So the first version of this tool was Oracle Data Integrator 10G. Later, they have come up with the newer version with lot of changes. That was Oracle 11G, and now recently, almost year and a half ago, they have launched another version which is 12C, and they have made quite a lot of changes the way it tool work now from the beginning. So 12C is the latest version. Oracle Data Integrator, it's something which has a different set of architecture. Okay, so in today's session, I'll explain you about the how this tool works, how it has a different set of components, and what architecture it follows. So this is going to be the agenda for this session. I'll explain you what is Oracle Data Integrator, why Oracle Data Integrator is required. I'll give you the overview of ODI architecture. Basically, I'm going to explain you about the 12C. Now we have to switch to the newer version of ODI 12C. So architecture for the ODI is almost similar, even the components. I'll explain you about the graphical module, what are the agents we have, and the repository. Okay. So first thing, why Oracle Data Integrator? So first thing which I can give you, telling you that this is the reason this tool make different than other ETL tools. First thing is the architecture, the ELT architecture, which provides high performance. Why? I'll explain you in coming slides. It has active integration, which enables real-time data warehousing and operational data hubs. It has declarative design, which improves developer productivity. So the way we design and mapping, or what you can say, a object which can able to move data from one table to another table, more than one table to another table, or more than one table, makes it more productive the way it performs. Okay, ODI has set of knowledge modules which are nothing but a code template for a different set of technologies. We use them for achieving our requirement. So it provides flexibility and extensibility. ODI combines three styles of data integration: database, event-based, and service-based. So based on the data, we perform integration. Based on the event occurring on the source, we perform the integration, and based on the services. Let me adjust. Now is it okay? Okay. So ODI shortens the implementation time with its declarative design approach. So declarative design, in the sense, here in ODI, when we develop something, we basically developed based on the requirement. So here we don't define how to create a mapping. We just give objects to ODI, okay, and define the connections and the transformation rules, how it has to implement on database. That is something which is defined by the knowledge modules. That shortens the implementation time. Now if you can see on your screen, I have a conventional integration process which is followed by tools like DataStage, Teradata, HUnity. All those old ETL tool follows this. So what they do, first we extract the data from source, transform, we load it to a specific hardware, a server, we perform the transformation on the data, and then move it to the actual target table. So first we extract, then load it to a specific hardware, a transformation server, to perform transformation on the data, and then later we move it from that server to actual target server in actual target tables. So this is what done by the conventional integration process. Now what ODI has as an architecture, now you can see ODI has a ELT architecture instead of ETL. It extracts the data from source, load it to the target, and then it transforms. So on your right you have a next generation ELT architecture which follows by the ODI, and on the left side you have conventional ETL process. So this what you can see here has the flexibility to move this transformation to source to target on any third data server which has the capabilities to run the SQL. Okay, so ODI requires an SQL engine to perform the transformation. Okay, so when you are creating a data load from one server to another, there might be different technology involved. So you can choose any of the technology which supports SQL as your transformation server, and ODI will perform all those transformations there and then move the data wherever you want. So here what happens, we extract the data and then load it. So basically let me create a small diagram to explain you this. So what happens, let's assume this is your source data server and this is your target. Let's assume this one is Oracle DB and this one is your MS SQL. Okay, and you have some tables which you have to move data from there to here. Okay, so when we use ODI, what happens, the Oracle Data Integrator creates a staging area on your source or on your target depending on your choice. So if you choose to have staging area on target, so it basically, while defining the connection, we have to define a schema where ODI can create temporary tables. So on that particular staging schema, ODI creates temporary tables to perform the transformation. Okay, and then once the transformation has been done, it moves data to the actual schema and actual target table in the same data server. So data movement will be very fast. So how it works? Basically, this data movement is done through set of KMs, knowledge modules, which contains the code to perform this data movement. So for different set of technologies, there are different set of KMs which you can use and perform the data load. So this data movement become very fast when you don't have any other third data server involved for performing the transformation. You just move the data from source to target server on a temporary table, perform transformation while doing this or while doing this to this, and then move it to actual target table. So how you can imagine how fast it can be than other ETL tool, but when it doesn't have any specific data server involved for transformation. So now you might be having question in your mind that let's assume that if you don't have a SQL engine, so here you have both Oracle and MS SQL which supports SQL to perform transformation, but let's assume that any of the technology doesn't support the SQL and you have to perform transformation. So what to do? So in that case basically what you can do, you can use any of the already defined SQL connection as a staging for performing that transformation. So let's assume if this is a file and this is, let's assume any of the application which doesn't support SQL, let's say Hyperion, Asbase or something like that. So in that case you can move data from file to a staging area which is a third data server defined on ODI, transform the data, and then from there it move it to your target. So that's what the flexibility you have with ODI to perform. Okay, now you have the architecture of your Oracle data integrator. At the bottom of the architecture we have repositories. Repositories are nothing but schemas defined in the database for ODI, where ODI stores the metadata. So whatever we are doing on ODI, it goes and store on the repositories which we have to configure while installing the Oracle data integrator. So once we have installed ODI, we configure the repositories on the schemas which where ODI basically creates list of tables and store whatever it performs. Like if you have created a mapping or a package or a load plan or a procedure, any object which you have created in ODI has to be stored inside the repository. So ODI doesn't create a file on a Windows directory. It basically stores inside all the detail inside the table and it fetches from there. So all you do will be contained inside the repository. So this is at the bottom of your architecture. You have source and target. So ODI supports disparate systems, legacy files, DBMS. Let me show you the list. Okay, so here you can see the list of technology which ODI supports for using as a source or as a target. You have all the industry standard databases and applications and file systems listed over here. In case you think you have to use something and which is not listed over here, you can add it to this list. Okay, that's what the flexibility you will get with the ODI. So you can connect to any of the technologies over here, and in case you want to connect to a particular technology which is not present over here, you can add it by right click on the technology, new technology, and defining the technology specific details over there. Okay, so this is the list of object. Now technology support. Now on the top of it we have graphical user interface of ODI, which called as ODI Studio. Okay, which you have just seen. What you have on the ODI Studio side, you have JVM, where you can basically, it's an ODI SDK where you can write code, groovy code, to perform creation of all ODI objects. If you are good at programming, you can use that. You have ODI Studio where you have 4 different navigators. Let me explain you that. So what are those navigators? You have Designer Navigator, where basically you create all your projects for data movement, inside which you have all the objects. I'm giving you a brief right now. In future you'll get all the details about it. You have models over here in the designer. So most of the time as a developer you spend on the designer. You have Operator Navigator, where you can see the execution log. So whatever you are executing, if you have created a mapping or a package or a procedure, all those things you basically execute and monitor here. So all the steps of your execution, what time it executed, what time it finished, how many number of insert have been done, how many number of update, how many number of delete, all those details, all the statistics you can see over here. What time start, what time end, what was the name of the session. Okay, not even that, you can see the steps, even the code, what code it has executed in the background. So what, that is something which you gonna like about ODI, is that in background whatever ODI is doing, if it is if it is executing an insert query, or it is executing a select query or update, whatever it is doing, you can view it, you can open it in a sequence. If you wish to go to code, and you can see it, what exactly it's doing. So you can find out what code it executes in the background, and if there is something failing to execute, what is the error behind it. So you can find out, and easy, just you need to understand the SQL to understand this, what exactly happening over here in the background. You just need to understand SQL. If you are good at SQL, you'll be master in ODI in couple of months. So operator is a place where you basically monitor the execution, and if something is failing, you can find out the log of it. So you can find out the error, then the code which is failing, and you can correct that. Okay, so operator is place where you can see the execution log. Next you have topology. So topology is the place where you have list of all the technologies present, where you define the connections to your source and target. So this is the place where you define connection once and then use it as many as time you want. So basically this is segregated in different partitions, like you have physical architecture, you have logical architecture, you have contexts, okay, repositories, all those details we have in the topology. So what we do in physical, what we do in context, logical architecture, that I'll explain you in upcoming sessions. So basically you can, what I can give you a brief about it is that physical architecture is the place where we define the physical connection physically, that means with all the details what JDBC URL you require to connection, the credentials and the username and all you define for a data server, and then inside that you define a schema to which you want to connect for bringing the table as a source or as a target. Okay, so on the topology you don't define whether this connection is going to be used as a source or as a target. This is one-time job. Once you have defined it, you can use it as many as time you want in the designer here. So physical architecture is the place where you define connection physically, and logical architecture is the place where you define connection logically. If you have different set of environment like production, testing, development, so you don't need, if you have same set of schemas and table inside, you don't need to define them many times in the logical set. You define once, you create model based on the logical schema and use them in your project, and when you migrate to a different environment, it will work because the logical schema is connecting to your physical schema with different context. Okay, so there might be different set of context. This is something which is takes time to understand, which I will explain you in detail, don't worry. Okay, so the last navigator we have on the studio is Security Navigator, where you have users, you have profiles which you assign to users. So there are different set of profiles like designer, connect, console and operator. So it depends on the task which you have to perform. So if I am going to work as a designer in the team, so my manager will define me as a designer, my profile will be designer, my user are going to be having a profile designer. Okay, if my manager wants me to be only a production support person who don't need to perform development, I need to just monitor the log, then this profile will be assigned to that user who has to monitor. So this way there are different set of pre-built profiles which you can assign to users. You can create as many as user want from here and assign the profiles to them. Similarly, you can create your own profiles here based on your requirement. So that's what the flexibility you have with Oracle Data Integrator to create your own profile. Okay, Oracle Data Integrator can be deployed on our application server. So we use a WebLogic server for deploying our ODI as a web console. So there is one of the ODI container called ODI console, which can be deployed on WebLogic server and can be accessible through a browser without installing ODI. So you don't need to install ODI. You basically deploy your ODI on WebLogic server, and then the URL you have to share with your team who wants to access ODI without installing it on web browser. So they can access the ODI objects on a remote machine on a web browser without installing ODI. But they cannot perform development. They can only monitor the executions. They can execute the scenarios. They can view what are the developed objects are present in the ODI. Okay, so that's what the ODI console is. You have a web service container with ODI where you can deploy your public web services and data services also. So it's a quite simple architecture with the list of objects you have. Now I'm going to give you a brief about the features of Oracle Data Integrator. It has a faster and simpler development and maintenance cycle. Because of the way we perform development over here, it will become very fast and quick to develop any object in ODI and then later maintaining it. It has data quality firewall. Data quality firewall is something which allow ODI to restrict data which doesn't satisfy your target table constraints. Okay, so let's assume that you have a target table where you have defined constraint that the employee age should be lesser than 21. Okay, you have defined that employee address should not be null. You have defined that employee number should be unique. These kind of constant you have defined on the target, and the source data, which is a raw data, might have duplicate record, null record, and having a lot of employees greater than age 21. So you wish to perform load of only those rows which satisfy those constraints. So the data quality firewall let you load all those records to your target, and the records which is coming from source and not satisfying the constraint will be moved to the error table, which you can later check why it doesn't went through to the target, what was the reason behind it. So for that we have this data quality firewall, which basically implemented through a set of KM called CKM, check knowledge module. Okay, so for that also you don't need to do a lot of stuff on the mapping. You just need to select a KM, nothing else, and ODI will do the task. So this is how it makes it very fast and very redundant. So it has better execution performance. Now better execution performance, as I already told you, that it has eliminated the external hardware for performing transformation. So automatically it becomes faster and has better execution performance because it has less amount of data movement. So, and the code which is written on the KM performs all the required tasks. It has simpler and more efficient architecture. Simpler and more efficient architecture also, it's almost similar because the data movement which we are doing it very fast. When you perform development of mapping, you don't need to define connections each time you create a new mapping. You use existing connections. You just drag and drop your objects and perform the data movement. Let me quickly show you a mapping to explain you how you can basically move the data in ODI through object. So this is something which basically loading the data to a target table in Oracle. Okay, from another Oracle table. So there are two tables, product and order detail, which we are joining over here through component list. We have list of components which we can use here and then load the data to a target. This is mapping where you can have as many as target you want and as many as source you want to have. There was a limitation with the older version of ODI that you cannot have more than one target table in a mapping. That was called as interface in the older version. Now here in the 12C we call interface as a mapping, and you can have more than one target tables in the mapping here. So this is a simple mapping where you have two source table, one target table, where you have defined the transformations here on the expression tab from both the tables. You have written a join condition here, a simple join condition. So that was the logical tab, and on the physical tab you define the set of KM which you require to use for movement of data. So you just need to choose the KM here in this drop down list, which basically coming from the knowledge module you have imported in the project. So we just choose the required KM based on the technology involved and the strategy we want to perform, and set up the options required to perform the task, and finish. Just this you have to do and execute your mapping, and this will move the data from one end to another end as you wish. Okay, so this is how simple it is, and this mapping you can design in couple of minutes. Platform independence. Now, platform independence in the sense ODI can be installed on any operating system. It's a Java based application which can work on Linux, Unix, Windows, Solaris, AIX, all those operating system can be installed on those operating systems. So it becomes platform independence because of that. Data connectivity. Data connectivity means it can connect to all the industry standard databases and applications. I have already shown you the list. And the last is cost saving. Cost saving here I mentioned because you required less man resources to perform development on ODI and maintain it, and the license of Oracle Data Integrator is cheaper than other ETL tools like for your information, Informatica is the tool, ETL tool, another ETL tool which is very expensive. So ODI is cheaper than that. So these are some of the features of Oracle Data Integrator. Now you can see on your screen these are the list of components. You have Designer Navigator, Operator Navigator, Topology Navigator, and Security, which I have already explained you. Other than that, there are ODI Agent, ODI Console, and Repository. So basically, all the object of ODI, like all the object of ODI Studio connects to the repository. So whatever you perform on any of the object, let's say you create some mapping, so that mapping goes and stored inside the repository. So you create a package, that package goes and stored inside the repository. Basically it goes and stored inside the tables inside the repository. So everything, all metadata from ODI, even if you are defining a connections, that goes and stored inside the repository, defining a user. So there are list of tables which ODI create inside the schema, repository schema, and whatever you do here will be stored inside that repository table. So that's what basically repository performs over there. So ODI connects all navigators to the repository. So let me give you a brief about, I have already explained you what these navigators are. Let you understand the definition. Designer Navigator is the graphical user interface for defining metadata and rules for transformation and data quality. It uses this information to generate scenarios for production, and Designer is where all the project development takes place. So Designer Navigator is the only place where you perform all those data movement object creation. So you don't need to move around many objects. You just need to stick to Designer Navigator for performing development. And Designer Navigator is the core module for developer for metadata administrator, and it handles models and projects. Operator Navigator. Operator Navigator is used to manage and monitor ODI in production. It is designed for production operator and displays the execution log with error count, number of row processed, execution statistic, and many more other detail which I have already told you. So at the design time, developer use Operator Navigator for debugging purpose. So through the Operator Navigator, you can manage your interface execution in the sessions as well as the scenario in the production. And the operator navigator stores this information in work repository while using the topology defined in the master repository. Topology Navigator. Topology Navigator manages the physical and logical architecture of the infrastructure. Basically, you define all servers, schemas, agents, which are registered in the ODI master repository, and major ODI component that contains information about the topology of the company's IT resources are defined over here. So you use the Topology Navigator for defining your information system. So let's assume you have a database to connect. Let's say Oracle instance, you define connection inside Oracle technology. If you have a MS SQL server to connect, so you define here inside MS SQL server a connection with the detail which you have. If you have to connect, basically load a file or use a file as a source, you define here inside a file. Okay, if you have a DB to connect, you can define here. So like that, you define the physical connection here. Okay. Last is the fourth navigator is the security navigator. The security navigator manages user and their privileges in ODI. It is used to create profile and provide rights to user to access ODI object and features. This navigator is usually used by security administrator. So a person who handles the security handles the security navigator for create user, assigning rights to the users, creating different profiles, and restricting permissions and all has been done on the security navigator. So this is what you have, 4 navigators on ODI. So when you learn ODI, you need to learn to use all those 4 different navigators and rest of the object inside those navigators. So this is what the ODI is, which we're going to learn how we perform creation of mapping for data movement, how we schedule them. Let me tell you what's going to be the session plan when we go through the sessions. So this is the basically a session plan. It's going to be a 20 hour for 25 hours, 1 hour each day. We have sessions in weekdays for an hour, 5 days a week. So we'll start with the introduction to Oracle Data Integrator, then installation of ODI 12c. So I will explain you how to identify the required softwares, what are the prerequisites, system requirement, installation of ODI, then how we configure the repository, how we set up the sample database. So you can install it on your local machine and you'll get the set of sample database which you can play around with. So you don't need to worry about a particular server to connect and then wait for it, and when it works, when you don't have internet connection, how you can practice. No need to worry. You can download the software, you can install it on your machine. It's simple, and practice. Then I'll explain you about the repositories in detail, what are the tables ODI creates, okay, how we connect to master and work repository. There is an object called agent, how it works. Okay, then ODI 12c features. So ODI 12c has a different set of features. It has list of components, how it better than the older versions, how we benefit using ODI 12c. All those things I'll explain in session 4. Then the topology navigator, I already told you it's little complicated to understand topology navigator because it has a physical architecture, it has a logical architecture, it has a context. So how it basically works, that I'll explain you in session 5. Then you have ODI models and data stores. So we'll move around to design a navigator and understand how we create a model, how we understand the metadata in ODI, how we perform all those reverse engineering things. Then we move it to mapping, which is the important object of ODI. This is something which you have to perform each time when you have to move data from one table to another. So I will explain you this. What is this mapping is, how we design them, what are the business rules, what are the components we have. Then we'll move around and see how we perform monitoring and debugging. Then how we go around and with more detail designing more mappings. So for mostly we concentrate on the mapping, because mapping is the core object of ODI, which you have to design each time if you wish to move data. Then there are different objects like procedures also we can create on ODI. There are set of tasks which you cannot perform using mapping. So for that we have procedures in ODI. So how we define procedure, declare procedures, how we write code inside procedure, all those things I explain. Packages. Packages is something which we use for deploying our development in production. So you have to understand how it works. So I'll explain you that. Then scenario, which is a compiled copy of package, how we schedule them. Okay. Then enforcing the data quality. So how we enforce to have the data quality for data movement. Change data capture in ODI, how this CDC works. Load plans, how it basically bunch all the packages inside one object and schedule them. So that is something which is already in our agenda. Security Navigator. So if you are going to work as an admin, you have to understand how we create profiles, how we define policies, how we create users, how we give authorities to users. So all those details will explain you in Security Navigator session. Then you have a step-by-step debugger in ODI 12c. So how it works, that I'll explain you. Then we'll go through some more complex things like developing the knowledge module. Basically, we can customize the knowledge module according to our own requirements, that I'll explain you. Then in ODI, you can automate the development. You can automate the development of the objects, like mapping through code, through Groovy code. So I'll explain you how can write a code to automate the creation of multiple mappings. Okay. So these are the 20 sessions we have, where I will explain you complete Oracle data integrator end to end. And there might be 2-3 more sessions where I will explain you the case studies. Okay. The actual scenarios in companies, how ODI has to be worked, how it has to be configured. Okay. So this is what is the agenda is. I will stop over here and will let you ask your question now. Yeah, guys, do you have any questions? Please, you can ask. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Victor, we don't share the slides. We basically shares the recording session. So you can go through it. If you